second page is having to do with a pet idea of mine. I actually made this to bring to the DDA, but we didn't have a meeting this month, so I thought I'd come with an idea.
You guys ready to get after them? You want to head with the first question, Mr. Salzwell?
Yes. Cliff, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself, Cliff, how long you've been living in Lowell and why you wanted to be a city council?
Sure. I've only lived here for a little over a year, but my wife and I opened our business right across the street in 2002. Because of I used to be in the wholesale jewelry business, so I dealt with a lot of mom and pops in small towns, and I knew from watching them that the more successful jewelry stores made it because they got involved in the community. So I don't think you can have a business in a town like Lowell and just sit and wait for something to happen. So I jumped right in. Well, Liz Baker was real a big factor in us deciding to move here to do this anyway. And so I got involved in the chamber from the get-go. And I was on the board a few times, and I like what goes on in this town, and I've done my best to promote it and help make the cool things cooler over the last 16 years. And been wanting to get on the city council, but had to live here. So once I fulfilled that obligation, decided to give it a shot.
Have you ever sought any elected office or been involved in politics prior to applying here today?
Yeah. Well, the reason I shared the little story on the end there, my first political involvement kind of was a treat. I got a phone call from this lady with a southern accent, and she said, "Now, are you Cliff Yankovich, and have you been posting a lot about internet taxation and stuff?" And she said, we want to fly you to Washington, D.C. to lobby your Congress people on this very subject. And I'm like, yeah, right. You want my credit card number? And then I actually said, give me your phone number, lady. I'm going to call you back. It turned out to be a legit deal. And it was an odd conglomeration of backers behind that particular effort. But there was about a half dozen of us from Michigan. There was a shoe guy from Traverse City. His business was like 100 years old. And there was a lady from Kalamazoo that had a bookstore. And we spent the day. They gave us kind of a couple hours training. And then they sent us out. And together we went to all the Michigan legislators. And some were somewhat receptive. A couple of them we might as well have been spitting in the wind. And obviously the bill never got any traction at the federal level. But in Michigan, things went a little better, and Snyder actually signed an internet taxation bill the following year. And the Michigan retailers invited me down to Lansing to watch him sign the bill. That was kind of fun. And as most of you probably know, in 2016, I threw my hat in the ring as a potential state representative, as a member of the Green Party. And the reason I ran as a Green primarily was because they do not accept any type of corporate money. And in my opinion, money is what's ruining our governance. I was a former Republican precinct delegate. I'm glad you asked that question because I just recalled that. I used to live outside Lansing, and if there's any Republicans in the House, you might remember Harmon and Alan Cropsey. They were the first father and son team to be elected to the Michigan legislature, and I actually rented part of a farmhouse from Harmon Cropsey, and he encouraged me to become a precinct delegate. So I used to be very involved in the Republican Party, and again, I was disillusioned because of what I saw, the influence of money. Both parties kind of point at the other one and say, oh, that's bad, look, he's going to a basketball game on the nickel of a donor, but when they get in power, they do the same thing. And all of that is to say, that's the reason I ran as a Green, because they don't take corporate money. And I think that's what's going to turn government around. They don't listen to the voters. And I know you probably didn't want to hear all this, but it's hard for me to stop once I start. So yeah, that's my that's my involvement thus far.
Great.
Sure.
What's your vision for the city of Lowell in the next 5-10 years?
Well, the reason I handed you the thing about the campground is, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Jim Hall. I can't take credit for the idea. Before he passed away, I don't know how many years ago that was, and maybe some of you even saw it. He brought in some drawings and some conceptual ideas, because he knew the fairgrounds was outgrowing the fairgrounds, and eventually it was going to be empty. And he had this vision for a campground, and it just rang my bell every which way. That's something I think that if you read my thing, it's just a totally logical next step with all the trails that we have converging. When they're done, we're going to be in the middle of the 5th largest trail system in the country. If you do some research, the ladies and gentlemen that ride bicycles, and they're serious about it, and they spend money like crazy. I ride a bicycle that I bought at a pawn shop for $90. These people ride carbon fiber $8,000 things, and the other cool thing is that we have the other stuff that they love. They love brew pubs. They love good restaurants. And that's why, I mean, not that that's the only thing I care about, but it's something that I think we have an opportunity to make a huge difference. I think it could be a moneymaker for the city and for all the businesses. It just makes way too much sense to me.
Are you aware of the issues facing the city of Lowell, and how have you kept yourself educated on these issues, and which are most important to you?
I certainly like to think I'm aware. On the DDA, and I'm very active in the chamber. For some reason or another, people have a tendency to drop into my store and talk to me about things that have nothing to do with jewelry, and I kind of like that. Now that I live in town and ride the aforementioned bicycle, I understand completely the frustration of residents. Our taxes aren't low here, and it's kind of frustrating to ride up and down on a street that hurts when you're on a bicycle. So I get why they're complaining. On the other hand, I've been around and I realize that this building we're sitting in, when we probably spent money that we didn't really have right before the poop hit the propeller. So I understand we don't have the funds, but also I've tried to engage in some of the more controversial issues that have faced you folks. And a couple of them, I was glad I wasn't sitting over there because you had to make some tough calls. So I think the roads are a concern for everybody. Even the trail system, the one meeting I came to support the trails, when I found out that the folks living on the street really hadn't even been notified, I really softened my position. One of the things I really enjoy about Lowell, especially in the times that we live in, where Republicans and Democrats can't even coexist, and three meetings come to mind: the one about the trails, the one about medical marijuana, about which I was passionate, having benefited from it, and this last one about the recreational marijuana, where I just came to observe because I really didn't have a dog in the fight, didn't really care one way or the other. My point is, I sat in meetings, like the trail thing. Betsy Davidson was sitting right next to Mark Munt. Betsy's been working on the trails for how many years? Mark was really pissed because his house was in the way of a potential major upheaval. But they got along. Nobody called anybody any names. They got up and stated their piece, and decisions were made and things moved forward. And that's part of what I think is the magic of Lowell, is that we can have people with diametrically opposed views and it doesn't get ugly. And I want to do whatever I can to keep that fire burning.
As you are aware, all city council members serve on other liaison boards and attend regular meetings. In addition, city council has a coffee with the council on Saturdays. And sometimes we have all-day budgets in April for the budget. And we attend many municipal league events throughout the year. Will you also be able to make room and attend some of these meetings as well?
Oh, sure. We're a mom and pop, but we are a mom and pop. And Julie is totally supportive of my attempt to get on the city council. So I'm sure she'd let me have some time off.
All right, how would you handle a situation where your decision or vote will not be popular with residents, but it remains the decision you believe best for the city?
Kind of like I handled, for instance, when I went to Washington D.C. about the internet tax bill, the Lowell Ledger gave me some coverage. One of the TV stations came out and interviewed me, and as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, when they do those interviews, they can put any kind of spin on them they want. And I took a lot of heat, not only on the internet, but I had people stopping in the store and expressing that they thought I was really stupid for trying to get the internet taxed. And I handled it. I didn't lose my temper. I just told them I didn't think it was fair. And I had a well-established position, and I just stuck to my guns with, I mean, hey, I get it. Somebody can save 6%. Spending $1,000 on stuff online, they'd rather not give $60 to the state of Michigan. I think that's wrong, and I don't think it's fair because I don't have any choice. So I think I can handle opposition without losing my circuitry.
Okay.
How would you handle your viewpoint on issues that differ from other city council members?
I think my experience on the board for the chamber and also on the DDA have prepared me for that kind of thing. On the DDA, it's clearly spelled out in the charter what a DDA does, includes marketing. There has been a person on the DDA forever, even before I was on the board and I was just coming here with Liz asking for money. No, 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 because he thinks that's wrong. Well, I served on a board with him and you know, he had his position, he knew what my position was, and that's how it went.
All right, a resident comes to you about a complaint on a matter they addressed with city staff. Although not to the satisfaction of the resident, city staff has properly handled the matter from a legal and administrative basis. The resident expects you to rectify the matter as their elected official. What do you do?
I guess depending on the severity of the issue, if I was not up to speed on it, if somebody was squawking about something that Mike had done or maybe the police had done, I would go to the respected person and get the city's side of the story and do my best. If I disagreed with what the city decided, I might try and make something happen to change that. If I was convinced that the city had made the proper decision, I would go back to the person and say, hey, this is what was decided, and frankly, I agree with it.
All right, thank you.
Do you have any questions for us, any of us?
When are we going to get roundabouts?
Meeting is over.
Monday.
I think we're all set.
Next week.
Next week.
Well, you were in the running until you asked that question.
Well,
It's the dumbest thing on the planet for a roundabout.
no, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking your time and giving me the opportunity.
No, we haven't made it through any kind of meeting without a discussion on roundabouts in almost a year. I was hoping that would come to an end today, but here we are.
The street continues.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, it's just like a...
finishing up 2018 on a real high note around here.
Maybe the universe is sending you a sign, Mr. Mayor.
That everyone's wrong and I'm right.
One last question. If you were appointed to the council, what would you wear to the ugly sweater?
Should have been on there.
Wasn't that? I thought I put that on there. I would go with a dress.
You were in the running, so you said that they know. There you go. At least lost two of us.
Hey, our lawsuit was settled amicably.
Differing opinions, but you were able to
Exactly.
come to a...
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Enough said.
My wife has an ugly sweater. All I have is really cool ones. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Cliff.
See you, Cliff.
Council comments, Mr. Salisbury.
It was great to listen to both council members. I'll give it some thought. We're going to make a recommendation on Monday. Is that our intention?
You can do
We can
anything
do
you
it
want.
today,
You can make a
or-
decision today, I make a decision next council meeting Monday. That's totally up to the council. You can do whatever you want.
I'm just glad we had two council people show up. I like diversity. I mean, I'm not opposed to either one of them. I think they would both do justice to helping us along. So I don't think we can go wrong making a decision either way, personally.
Mr. Canfield.
It is nice that we had multiple candidates. I really would like to see a woman on the council. I think a woman's perspective would be helpful for us. On the flip side of that, Cliff's credentials are just over the top incredible. His involvement in the community, he's probably more qualified than I am certainly to be here. Just has been great in his community involvement and the way he handles things. He's not afraid to speak up on the tough issues and very well qualified. So it's going to be a tough decision. We have two good candidates.
Mr. Chambers.
I think it's pretty neat that we got to do this process. As you all know, I was the only one to fill it out. I didn't get to go through this process. It's quite interesting. I have to say, Cliff attends more of our city council meetings than I don't think I've ever seen her at one of our meetings. Although Cliff walks by our coffee with council, he waves when we wave. With Greg, I would like to see a woman sit on our board, but again, Cliff's just, he presents himself well. Just over the top.
I don't know what to say, I thought. I was impressed with both, I thought. Cliff's answers were a little more thought out and detailed. Cut it short. He didn't cut it short. And I think he's a lot more qualified than any of us really to sit up here. But I think there's something to be said for a female perspective. I'm not convinced that is the right one. So I don't know. You guys want to talk about any of the questions in general? Any specific answers?
The only thing I'll say, regardless of what choice we make today, I would encourage that other person to seek election in 2019, and I think that's when it's due next, and really,
This seat, if you pick someone today, correct.
They run again in November with us,
Correct.
with Marty and I.
They run.
This is short term.
Yeah, this is to the next, the charter requires to the next city election, so.
Here's the thing though, we're gonna be going through a lot of stuff in the next year, and I think there's something to be said about bringing somebody in who's experienced and invested and proven. He was been coming to meetings long before Jeff's spot was open. I don't know, there's a lot of stuff coming up that he's already done, I think, a good job of educating himself on.
You're gonna have some unpleasant times.
I mean, we're not the most experienced long-term seated council as we sit right now anyway, so I don't know.
I just think this isn't a very easy seat to sit in. I wasn't quite prepared enough when I sat here. And I think you have to look at our candidates they have to come up to speed, and you have to come up to speed relatively quick.
So I think that Jim's the only one who came in, on a regular election type. Well, I did the first time, but Greg came in because he had to, and you came in because you had to. I got pushed over to this chair because I had to. You don't have a choice, you're gonna learn. You're either gonna learn the right way or you're gonna learn the wrong way, but if you learn the wrong way, take everybody else down with you. That's the thing about sitting up here. You just want vote. But these votes are gonna be so important coming up.
Well, I think I'd kind of like to see us decide this today. And just
Be done.
be done.
Yeah.
None of the, I know sometimes the 48-hour rule is a good thing, but in this instance, I think we just need to just get it done and
Rip it off like a Band-Aid.
got it.
Right. I would certainly encourage both candidates to run, whoever does get appointed, maybe they'll decide it isn't for them and not run, but there's going to be some seats open. But as much as I'd like to see a woman on the council, I think Cliff's credentials are just over the top, like we said earlier. He's so involved already in the community and so well-spoken. He's more experienced than any of us on the council currently. And I would tend to lean toward appointing Cliff and encourage Pam to run next November. And I think the community would like, I've heard it before in other elections, the community would like to see women on the council. It's, you know, a broader perspective is very important, but we just haven't had any candidates recently that were interested. So I'm thrilled that Pam is, and hopefully, depending which direction we go today, if she's not appointed, then she'd return next September, October, November, and make a run.
And either way, that, you know, either direction we take, if the other person chooses not to run next November, then it kind of sets our decision in concrete. You know what I mean? We obviously got the person with the commitment if the other one disappears off the face of the earth.
It is.
We had it in the last election. We had that kid run out of nowhere, and then once he lost, you never heard from him again. So was it, you know, was he doing it for the right reasons? I don't know. Then you got people off the council that are, people have been off the council for years that are still involved around here. Everything's around here all the time. Jim Hodges is never far away. You can always find out. So it says a lot, I think, about commitment. But one thing you can question Cliff on, a lot of things you cannot question Cliff on his commitment. Shall we vote?
With that, I'll ask Mike to make a recommendation.
Oh,
Not you, not
no,
you.
no, I don't
Mike,
even-
not you, Mike, here, go ahead.
Well, if I'm hearing what I think I'm hearing, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we appoint Cliff to the city council. And we'll have him here Monday to be sworn in.
Week from Monday.
A week from
Actually,
Monday.
no, we'll swear him in. We'll swear him in immediately, before the meeting. We'll have, I mean, we can do something formally, but like I can, next week, I mean,
Well, he'd have to come to the committee of the whole, so he could come in the
Right.
afternoon and get sworn in.
or I mean, he'd come in this Monday.
Yeah.
Dick had actually suggested that once you make the decision, first opportunity, he can come down here and swear him in. We can do it in the office. It's not, but then you can do something formal for him
Yeah.
at the next meeting.
With
Well,
that, I'll support.
any other discussion on the motion? Susie?
Councilmember Canfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Chambers,
Yes.
Councilmember Salzweedl,
Yes,
and Mayor DeVore.
Yes. With that, Mr. Salzweedl?
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 10:55.
I'll support.
And will the city reach out to Pam, or that be?
I'll do that.
Where?
Yep, I'll reach out to both of them this afternoon.
Thank you.
And maybe wait till Monday, because doesn't Pam have that wedding all weekend that she was catering for?
It's up to you. I mean,
I'll reach out to them both Monday morning, at the latest Monday morning. Motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed. And we're adjourned.